This record comes from Suryara. What follows is an observation. I kept walking west, past the salt flats, past the last cluster of saltore sitting at the edges, until the white ground ended and the sea began. This part of Suryara is hard to describe without it sounding like an exaggeration. On one side, the salt flat, completely white, completely silent, still in every direction, as far as you can see. On the other, the sea, grey green, loud, and constantly moving. And between them, maybe 50 meters of dark wet ground where the two met. Not quite land, not quite water. Just this strip in the middle that can't decide what it is. I stood at the edge of the flat and looked at it for a long time. There's a small community here that has fished this coastline for generations. Not a large settlement, maybe 30 families, but they know this stretch of water the way the salt workers know their flats. Every current, every seasonal shift, every change in what the water brings in and what it doesn't. I sat with an older woman who had been fishing here since she was a child. She made tea and didn't seem particularly surprised about having a visitor. People come through sometimes, she said. They always want to see where the flat ends. She pointed them out before I even saw them. Abymo. Moving through that in between strip, the dark wet ground where the flat meets the sea. They're hard to describe the first time you see one. A dense sphere of compressed water, almost perfectly round, with a small spinning vortex rotating above it constantly, and faint bioluminescence pulsing from somewhere inside. They exist right at the boundary between the land and the sea, not fully belonging to either. I'd read about them before coming here, but seeing one in that in between strip, where the ground itself can't decide what it is, it made sense in a way it didn't on paper. She explained it while we watched them. The boundary where the flat meets the sea is not fixed. The seawater pushes underground into the flat during certain seasons. Freshwater pushes back during others. Abymo track that line. They live exactly where those two systems meet, feeding off the pressure difference between them. The fishing families here have always used them as a marker, not consciously, just if Abymo are feeding close to the flat, the boundary is where it should be. If they are feeding near the water's edge, something has pushed it inward. They read Abymo the way the eastern settlements read the sky. I watched them for a while, and then I noticed they were feeding very close to the water's edge, much closer than I expected. I asked her if that was normal for this time of year. No, she said. They shouldn't be further in. The sea shouldn't be pushing this far into the flat until at least 2 months from now. Said it in the same way the salt worker talked about salter at the edges. Plain, flat, just information. Eastern settlements, dropping basins faster than expected. Salt flats, crust drying faster than expected. Coastline, the sea pushing further in than it should be this early. Three different environments, three completely different communities, three different ways of reading the land. All of them saying the same thing. Something is moving faster than it should be. Here's what stayed with me walking back that evening. The salt worker didn't know about the eastern basins. The fishing woman didn't know about the flats. The water keeper back east didn't know about any of this. Everyone has their own reading, their own version of it's probably the season. Nobody has stood in all three places and looked it together. Nobody except me. I left the coast as it got dark. Behind me, the sea. Ahead, the white flat. The salter sitting at the edges, the Abymo still feeding too close to the water. The vortex above each one, still spinning, still releasing pressure, the way it always does. I thought about the woman's face when she said, the sea shouldn't be this far in yet. Not alarmed, not scared. Just someone who knows a place extremely well encountering something that doesn't fit. She'll probably decide it's the season, and she won't be entirely wrong, and that is the problem.